In the heart of Cumbly, Nia lived what many would call a perfect life. Her husband, Dariuss, was everything people admired: tall, charming, and always dressed like success itself. He owned a booming tech company, shook hands with powerful people, and made sure they were the it couple in Maboro estate. To their neighbors, they were goals: elegant home, luxury cars, weekend getaways to coastal resorts. People looked at Nia and whispered, "She's so lucky." And honestly, sometimes she believed it too. But behind the smiles and Sunday brunches, Nia often felt a strange emptiness she couldn't explain. Dariuss would kiss her on the cheek, hold her hand at parties, and post photos with sweet captions. But there was a distance in his eyes, something too smooth, too practiced. He never got angry, never raised his voice, never argued. It sounds perfect, right? But that silence became louder over the years. She noticed how his hugs didn't linger, how he always turned his phone face down, how the warmth in their bedroom had slowly cooled. Still, Nia brushed the doubts aside. He's just tired, she told herself. He's building an empire. She wanted to believe in the fairy tale everyone else saw. She baked his favorite meals, hosted guests with grace, and smiled for every picture. But deep down, something tugged at her spirit. A quiet voice, whispering, "This is too perfect. Look closer." And in time she would. But for now, the storm hadn't come. Not yet. It started small. Dariuss began coming home later than usual, brushing it off with excuses. Meetings ran long. Traffic was crazy. Just a quick drink with clients. Nia didn't argue. She trusted him. Or maybe she just wanted to. But what really made her uneasy was the way he suddenly guarded his laptop like a secret. He used to leave it lying around, open on the kitchen counter or couch. Now, it was always zipped up, password, never out of sight. Even when he showered, it went with him into the bedroom and stayed locked away. At first, she told herself not to overthink it. Maybe there's sensitive business stuff on there, she thought. He was a CEO, after all. But deep inside, that voice, the one she'd been ignoring for years, started to grow louder. Something wasn't right. Then came the rainy night. The sky cracked with thunder, the lights flickered, and Dariuss came home drenched but distracted. He dropped his coat on the chair, mumbled something about an early meeting, and went straight to bed. That's when she saw it. His laptop, left open, screen glowing, no password yet. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She stood frozen for a moment, the storm outside echoing the one inside her chest. Part of her wanted to walk away, pretend she hadn't seen it. But another part, the one tired of guessing, tired of pretending, moved her hands. Trembling, she sat down. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad. One click, just one. That's all it took. The screen came alive. A folder sat right there on the desktop. Meetings _ confidential. It wasn't hidden, but it wasn't meant to be seen. Her gut twisted. She clicked it, and in that moment, everything began to change. She didn't know yet what she would find. She didn't know how deep the betrayal ran. But something told her this was the beginning of the truth. And sometimes, the truth doesn't whisper. It crashes in like a storm. Nia stared at the folder on the screen. Meetings _ confidential. Her hands were shaking, her breath uneven. She clicked it, half hoping it was just business files, spreadsheets, or boring reports. But the moment it opened, her stomach dropped. Photo after photo filled the screen. Hundreds of them. Not a single one from a meeting room. There was Dariuss, smiling in a beach chair. Dariuss, wrapped in someone's arms. Dariuss, kissing a woman Nia had never seen before. She had soft eyes, flawless skin, and a confident smile. Like she knew she was his favorite secret point, one image after another. They looked like a couple on honeymoon. Matching outfits, wine glasses clinking, sunsets behind them. They weren't in Cumbly. These photos were taken at Manda Coast, the place Nia had always wanted to visit, the place Dariuss once told her was too expensive for a getaway. Nia scrolled faster now, her eyes filling with tears, but she couldn't stop. Every picture felt like a slap. Poolside breakfasts, candlelit dinners. Even one where the woman, Talitha, her name showed in a file, was wearing a robe that looked exactly like Nia's favorite silk one. She saw pictures of them laughing in the car, checking into resorts, holding hands like teenagers in love. But the worst ones? They were taken in places she knew. Familiar cafes in Couldnt, the mall they frequented, even the same hiking trail she and Dariuss once went on for their anniversary. This wasn't a fling. This was a second life, a whole love story written behind her back. Her heart felt like it was being crushed. Her mind went blank. Years of loyalty, of smiles and sacrifice, now felt like a lie. She had cooked for him, prayed for him, defended him, and all this time, he was building a future with someone else. The silence in the room was deafening. Rain still tapped gently at the windows, but inside her, everything had changed. One folder, that's all it took, one folder to break the world she thought was real, and somehow Nia knew. This was only the beginning. Nia didn't mean to open the video. She was still numb, still trying to make sense of the pictures, still hoping, deep down, that maybe there was some explanation, some mistake. But her finger moved on its own, like her body was no longer hers. She clicked. The video started playing. The room on the screen looked painfully familiar. Their bedroom. Her bedroom. The one she decorated with soft creams and golds. The one that once felt safe. And there, right on their bed, was Dariuss, with Talitha, laughing. At first, Nia couldn't hear the sound. Her heart was pounding too loud. But then, words cut through, sharp and cruel. She still thinks it's her fault she can't have kids, Dariuss said, smirking as he pulled Talitha closer. Always crying about it, like that's supposed to make me stay. Talitha giggled, resting her head on his chest. Poor thing, she mocked, still holding on to a marriage with no future. Nia's whole body froze. Her knees gave way, and she dropped to the floor, catching herself with one hand as the other slammed the laptop shut. It had only been 15 seconds. 15 seconds that destroyed everything. She sat there on the floor, her chest tight, tears falling freely now. This wasn't just cheating. This was humiliation. Cruelty. A man she trusted with her life was now mocking her deepest pain, something he once held her through during long, sleepless nights. She had blamed herself for years, questioned her worth, prayed for answers, and all along, he was turning her sorrow into a joke. The silence in the room was thick, broken only by the storm still whispering outside the windows. But inside her, a louder storm had begun. Something fierce, something final. 15 seconds. That's all it took to destroy everything she thought she knew. The love, the home, the future, they weren't real. Not anymore. And in that moment, Nia knew she would never be the same again. Nia didn't scream. She didn't break things or cry in front of him. She didn't wait for him to come home with one more excuse, one more lie. After that night, after those 15 seconds, something inside her shut down. But at the same time, something else woke up. A quiet strength. Cold, clear, and powerful. She moved through the house like a ghost. Her hands packed slowly but surely. 2 bags, that's all. A few clothes, important documents, her journal, and a small photo of her late mother. She took only what she needed. Everything else, memories, pain, the life she built with Dariuss, she left behind. She stood in the living room for a moment, just breathing. The house was so quiet, yet every corner felt loud with betrayal. She looked at the glass table by the couch, took off her wedding ring, and placed it right in the center. No note, no bouvier, just a ring. Let it speak for itself. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the ground was still wet. She slid into her car without a sound, started the engine, and drove away while the sky was still dark. No one saw her leave. No neighbors watching. No dramatic seats. She drove for hours until the noise of the city faded behind her and the dusty roads of Okuro welcomed her like an old friend. Her grandmother's village, slow, peaceful, untouched by the chaos of her life, felt like the only place she could breathe again. When she arrived, her grandmother didn't ask questions. She just opened her arms and held Nia close, like she used to when she was little and scared of thunderstorms. No words were needed. Just that hug, that silence was enough. Nia didn't want to fight. She didn't want to confront Dariuss or scream about betrayal. Not yet. What she needed was to hear herself think, to find her voice again, to sit under the trees she used to climb, feel the wind on her skin, and remember who she was before the lies. She left with no plan. No timeline. Just one promise to herself. She would not return the same woman who left. Weeks passed in Okiro. Nia didn't rush. She healed in silence. Walks through the fields, long talks with her grandmother, quiet mornings with tea and her journal. But healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant remembering who she was before she gave everything to someone who gave her nothing but lies. And when the time felt right, she returned, not with tears, but with a plan. No one saw her coming. She didn't call. She didn't text. She just walked back into the city, dressed in calm confidence, and met with a lawyer she had quietly hired while in Okiro. A woman. Sharp, brilliant, and fierce. They went through every paper, every contract, every signature Dariuss had ever overlooked. That's when Nia smiled for the first time in weeks. Not from joy, but from power. Years ago, when they started the company, Dariuss had insisted on rushing through the paperwork. Just sign here, he'd said, trusting her to handle the details. And she had. But now, those small details were her greatest weapon. Because while he was out building his image, chasing another life with another woman, she had done the real work. She had protected the foundation. And in the fine print, it was clear Nia owned 51% of the company. Not him. Her. So when Dariuss was handed the court papers at his office, surrounded by staff and silence, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. Shock. Confusion. Then panic. He called her phone and answered that he sent emails. Nothing. He even showed up at the lawyer's office yelling. But it was too late. Nia didn't want revenge. She wanted what was hers. And she took it. The board was stunned. Investors confused. But the documents were clean, the numbers legal, and the signatures undeniable. Dariuss hadn't read the fine print. Nia had. Every single word. And now, the man who thought she'd stay silent was about to learn what silence looks like when it walks in with the law. Nia didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She had the papers. She had the power. And this time, she wasn't leaving. The shareholder meeting was packed. Big names, investors, board members, all dressed in suits, sipping coffee, expecting another smooth presentation from the company they had trusted for years. Dariuss walked in like he always did, straight-backed and confident, ready to charm the room. But today was different, because today, Nia was already there. She stood at the front of the room, calm, dressed in sharp navy blue, holding a small remote in her hand. Her presence alone made people whisper. Dariuss froze when he saw her. For a second, he smiled, thinking maybe she came to talk, to settle things privately. But then she turned to the screen behind her and said, clearly, before we begin, there's something everyone needs to see. She clicked play. The room went quiet. The video started. Their bedroom, Dariuss and Talitha, laughing, kissing, mocking, her name, her pain, out in the open now for everyone to see. Gasps echoed like explosions. One man dropped his pen. A woman covered her mouth. The silence was thick with shock and disgust. Talitha, sitting near the back, went pale, grabbed her purse, and ran out the door without looking back. Dariuss stood frozen, his face drained of all color. He looked around as if searching for someone to stop it, to explain it away. But no one came to help. Not this time. When the video ended, Nia didn't speak. She didn't have to. The damage was done. One by one, investors stood up and left. People whispered as they walked past Dariuss. Some shook their heads. Others didn't even look at him. Then security came forward. Not for Nia, for him. Mr. Dariuss, one of them said quietly, "You're no longer authorized to be here. Please step outside." He tried to speak, to argue, but the room was already moving on without him. As he was escorted out, he looked back at Nia, once the quiet wife, the woman he thought would never fight back. But she didn't even look at him. She was already turning toward the board, ready to speak again, this time as the new face of the company. After Dariuss was gone, many thought the company would fall apart. Investors were nervous. The media was circling. Whispers floated around about whether Nia could really lead. But Nia didn't flinch. She walked into the CEO's office, closed the door behind her, and got to work. She changed everything, starting with the name. The old brand carried too much of a shadow. She rebranded it with a new vision, a new logo, and a message that hit home. Built with integrity, powered by women. She cleaned house, replaced shady executives, brought in fresh minds, and focused the company's energy on innovation, not ego. Every decision she made was intentional. Every meeting was clear and firm. People noticed. Investors returned. Profits climbed. And the company, once built to serve Dariuss's image, now stood as a symbol of resilience and rebirth. But Nia didn't stop there. With her first big quarter of profit, she did something no one expected. She announced the launch of a tech center for women in Western Canara, her late mother's home region, and one of the most underserved areas in the country. The center would train girls in coding, business, and leadership. It would give women a space to dream, build, and rise. This isn't charity, Nia said at the launch event, standing in front of cameras. It's legacy. Her story went viral, not just in Couldnt, but across the country and beyond. Headlines everywhere read, from betrayal to boss. People shared her story like wildfire. How a woman torn down by lies rose again. Not with revenge, but with purpose. Interviews poured in. Magazine covers. Panels. Speaking invitations. But Nia stayed grounded. Her heart wasn't in fame. It was in the quiet power of rebuilding, of helping others rise with her. And as for Dariuss, his name faded fast. No company, no title, no one looking to interview him. He had become a footnote in the story of a woman who refused to be broken. Nia didn't just survive the storm. She built a future from it. Years had passed. Nia's company was thriving. The tech center in Western Canara had trained over 1,000 young women. Her name had become a symbol of strength, her story taught in business schools. People admired her not just for surviving betrayal, but for turning pain into power. She moved through her office with calm authority. Staff greeted her with smiles. Meetings ran smoothly, and her vision kept growing. She had peace. She had purpose. She had finally found herself. Then one afternoon, her assistant appeared at her door with a strange look on her face. "There's someone downstairs asking to see you," she said softly. "It doesn't have an appointment." Nia raised an eyebrow. "A name?" The assistant hesitated. He said, "It's Dariuss." For a moment, the air felt still, but Nia didn't panic. She didn't get angry. She simply stood, walked to the large glass window of her office, and looked down. And there he was. Dariuss stood by the front desk, clothes wrinkled, hair messy, eyes hollow, and oh suit, and oh charm, and oh confidence. Just a man who had lost everything, and now realized it. He looked up and locked eyes with her for the first time in years. He mouthed something, maybe her name, maybe please, but she didn't flinch. She turned to security. "Escort the visitor out," she said calmly. "He has no business here." They nodded and moved toward him. Dariuss tried to say something as they approached, hands out, voice rising in panic. "Nia, please. Just a minute, just one." But she had already walked back to her desk, her back straight, her heart steady. She didn't need to hear apologies. He wasn't part of her life anymore, just a chapter she had already closed. Outside, the guards gently but firmly led him away, his voice fading with every step. Inside, Nia opened her laptop and returned to her work, as if nothing had happened. Because for her, nothing had. The man who once tried to break her had come back with regret. But she was no longer the woman who needed his love, his words, or his explanation. The laptop had sat in Nia's home office for years, tucked away in a drawer, untouched, yet heavy with memory. It was the same laptop that shattered her world in seconds and started her journey to rebuild it. She never opened it again. Not once. One day, as she was walking through a local museum exhibit on women in business, something stirred in her. She saw photos of pioneers, entrepreneurs, leaders, women who had turned pain into power, just like she had. That's when she knew what she needed to do. A week later, she donated the laptop. She handed it over without tears, without hesitation. The museum team knew the story. Everyone did. They placed it inside a glass case with soft lights and a plaque that read, "The click that changed everything." Visitors stopped and stared. Young women read the story beside it with wide eyes, some whispering, That's Nias. It wasn't just a laptop anymore. It was a symbol of truth, of courage, of not staying silent. For Nia, it was closure. She stood in front of the display one last time. She didn't relive the pain. She remembered the power. That click had broken her, but it had also freed her. And everything she had built since that night was living proof. She smiled softly, turned around, and walked away. And just like that, Nia closed the laptop for good.